G'day, mate. It's the Aussie Creator.
The scariest thing I've had happen while camping. So I live in Eastern Oregon, and my mom lives in Western Oregon. I went to visit her for the summer and she's very outdoorsy, so we decided to take the 1-hour drive from her city to the coast. We end up at this free campsite at the top of this hill, huge foothills of the coastal mountains, about a 25-minute drive from the top where the campsite is to the bottom where the main road was, and we were the only campers there. We relaxed for the rest of the day, made food, etc. A truck full of men drive up the hill and talk with my mom. IDK what about, wasn't suspicious at the time, and they leave us. Fast forward to the middle of the night. I wake up to my mom sitting straight up in the tent. I wake easily, so I heard her gasp and it woke me. As soon as she saw I was awake, she put her hand over my mouth because I was starting to ask her what's wrong. It was dead silent, and all of a sudden you hear footsteps right beside the tent. The little flap that covers the zipper was even moving. Thankfully my mom has quick wits and said very loudly, "Kenny, grab the gun." Kenny is my dad, although that doesn't matter, and mind you he was not there, just us girls like I previously said. They left. No harm was done. Thank the Lord for my mama. TLDR, 2 girls at a campsite alone, people outside tent in the middle of the night, and my mom pulled some badassery. In high school my friends and I were messing around with a Ouija board one night. We had done it before and nothing remarkable had ever happened. We usually did it to try and scare each other or our girlfriends. We all thought it was a joke. That night there was no one else home except the 7 of us, and we were all together around the board. One of the girls there wanted to try it. She had never done it before. This time was different. The board misspelled some of the words the same way every time. It gave answers that seemed really historically accurate for our town, things we neither knew or cared about. Long story short, the spirit claimed it was a 10-year-old boy who had died on the property in the 1800s and was buried there too in an unmarked grave. My friend's house was on a farm in the edge of town. We were all a little freaked out because the board had never been so detailed and consistent. However, we were still skeptical and we were all assuming one of us was trying to scare the rest. Finally, my friend asked if the spirit could do something to prove he was there with us. It went to yes and then spelled out KNOCK. Then the planchette stopped moving. We just all stared at it silently, and then there was a rap on the window right next to us. The lights were on outside and there was absolutely no one out there. We never touched that effing board again. 4. Forgotten memory. Redditor call_me_egg shared this horrific tale. Growing up, my bedroom was the only one that faced the front of the house, street. When I was about 8 or 9, I woke up to my dad calmly but firmly telling me to get up, go in the bathroom, and shut the door. I was annoyed because I was half asleep, but I listened. Apparently I was more tired than I realized, because I fell asleep on the bathroom floor. The next morning I asked my mom what happened. She seemed oblivious and confused. I looked at my dad like she was crazy, and I asked him why he had woken me up. He denied doing it. I was becoming frustrated to the point of tears, but I ultimately let it go. Fast forward to college. I was home one break, and I decided to ask again. I had thought of that night off and on for years, and it still bothered me. This time, my dad goes, "Ha! I was wondering if you even remembered that." Turns out that a lot of houses on our block were being vandalized and robbed all those years ago. Someone had broken into the garage and was inside the house. My room was partially over the garage. My dad heard it happen and quietly got me to safety. Police were called, the guy ran. He was never caught, however, and my parents didn't want a terrified kid on their hands, so for years they pretended like nothing had ever happened. It wasn't supernatural, but it was unsettling for sure. Not to me, but to my sister. Her husband and her had just had their first child a few months prior. My brother-in-law was working the graveyard shift at his job as my sister stayed home taking care of my nephew. Around 2 a.m., she heard loud knocking on her back door. She went to go check it out and saw a lady banging on the door asking for my sister to let her in. The lady told my sister that her husband had just beat her down the street and was looking for her. My sister was hesitant to let her in since she had a newborn in the house and didn't want to interfere. She told the lady that the best she could do was call the police for her. The lady told my sister to not call the police and to let her in. This is where my sister got suspicious. She went to get her phone and called 911. When she went back to the door, the lady was gone. The police arrived a few minutes later and they told my sister that the same situation happened a few streets down. Apparently the couple would do this act to get into people's homes. I'm sure this is very common, but having it almost happen to my sister and my nephew just creeps me out. Some real Clockwork Orange shit.